for hitting that play button again to join us in this video. This time we're going to talk a little bit about what happens or how we prepare or consider the externals of our church. And so what's our worship strategy around the value of the community in which our church sits? And that can look different ways depending on where we are. And so just a little background on my own church. We sit in the middle of a community that has a lot of apartments around it. And so that means our community can sometimes be transient. So people don't stick around all the time. So what can we do in the meantime when someone shows up in our space who may not be there for long term, and what that looks like? And all of us have a context in the places where we serve. So as we kick it off, I want to ask all of you, what are some things that you look at when you consider the context around your church? Or even is that a big deal depending on where your church is? Because we can't always assume, depending on where the church sits, there may not be a community on the outside, and that's a reality. It may be in a place where people drive in, and so you have to look at how that looks for a community in a different way. So how has that worked in your context?
Ours is very complicated. I think I already shared that we are basically a drive-in church. Most of the people who attend our service drive at least 15, 20 minutes. However, the neighborhood in which our church building exists, it's on a college campus, across the street from HUD Housing, retirement community. Across the street the other way are housing projects. Across the other street this way, it's brand new apartment buildings with lots of young professionals. And across the street the other way, it's a very old neighborhood. So it's very diverse, lots of different backgrounds and experiences. And it can become one of those things where we like to just make assumptions about people. So we've had to learn to talk with people in each corner of the community and ask questions, hear stories to get an understanding. Not necessarily to make our worship service feel like a circus. I've done that too, where it's every moment of the service feels a little bit different. But to make sure that our expression of worship is faithful to the neighborhood in which we exist. We've long wondered, okay, God, do you want us to be somewhere else, or are we staying put? The neighborhood is changing, everything around us is changing, the city of Nashville is changing, and we just continue to feel called to this particular intersection that's really unique to us. So we have to have lots of conversations with people in our neighborhood.
Preaching pastors do this all the time. They exegete scripture. And I think there's a call to exegete our culture and to look at who are the people that God has entrusted us with and where has God planted us in this community, and to be able to really understand who is it that is here. And there's practical tools like demographic studies and being able to pare down on how many people live within a 3-mile radius that attend this church, or how many people are driving in. And if they're driving in, what communities are they driving in from? And then also, okay, within a 5-mile radius of this church, who are the people that live in this area and reside in this area? And really trying to get a handle on just the surface level, who's around us and who's our first touches that are right here. Heard a missionary talk about one time the power of just being able to go out and walk into the neighborhoods and being able to just be there and walk around and see and observe, and then reflect on that. Like have your board go out and walk the neighborhood and just observe and take it all in and take mental notes, and then talk about, what did you see? What did you feel? What did you hear? How does that impact when we think about ministry? How does that impact how we think about planning?
That's good. I think another question I've heard in that kind of context is to wonder, where is God already at work in what we see? What, instead of starting something new or feeling like we've got to reinvent the wheel, how do we see that the Lord is already working? How can we partner there? That's good.
Gotta tell you, when I'm at my worst, I'm at my worst when I am so locked in and have blinders on and forget that my perspective isn't the one that everybody else has. And that's not Philippians 2. That's not the way of the kingdom of God. And so I think that's something that I have to check myself in. And my reality is that, hey, you know what? The best part is I only see it the way I see it. Like, that's my best realization, when I'm like, I'm just one little tiny piece of it. And then my eyes have to be open to everything else.
Yeah.
Right?
That's good. That's good. One thing that we have tried to be conscious in is we don't spend a lot of time at our church. We don't spend a lot of time asking people to come to our church. And so we have tried to connect with our community and go in the community and connect with other community partners. And so one of the most fun things we did this past summer was several of our local organizations have mobile units that provide something. So one, the Child Abuse and Neglect Council, they have a rolling family resource center. And so that rolls in with resources into communities that need them, where there might be a transportation barrier. And in Saginaw, if you don't have a car, it is a transportation barrier because the bus lines are not really solid. But then we also had our local Great Lakes Bay Health, they have a mobile dental bus. And then our health department does vision and hearing screenings. And so the apartment complex across the street, we went over there and we set up and we gave hot dogs and we did all the things and we met our neighbors. And we even brought the bookmobile from the library. And so one of the things that, and as a result, going over to their homes, going over to their space, they ended up coming over to our church. So there are families who have come just because we went over to the neighborhood and we got to know them and we sat down and their kids could color and there was a bubble machine, and all those seem very trite, but kids gathered around that bubble machine. A $50 bubble machine became a connection point of conversation with parents, grandparents, and safe fun for kids. And all of a sudden, where's your church at? Oh, we're across the street. We'll be back over here. You're always welcome to come, but we'd love to come over here and hang out with you guys. And it just, that's the context of our community. And one of the things we realized, our building had a bad history in that community. So it was empty before we got there, and there was some historical things that they weren't necessarily a friend in the neighborhood, And so we asking people to come to our church wasn't going to happen. And so we went there, and now people will come over and people, and so it was understanding the context. And that means you get a lot of different things, right? You get a lot of different people with different backgrounds, and not that you wouldn't have that anyway, but sometimes you run into people that are absolutely not like your experiences when you start entering spaces that you wouldn't purposely choose to go. And so when it comes to having a strategy, I think it is important to have a strategy, to think about what does that look like? So when you get that person who comes into the church, who does have a gift, who does have an ability, who can serve, but they're new in the neighborhood, again, they're there 2 Sundays out of a month, maybe, but they still want to connect. What are things that a church can consider doing to give space for things like that, to make sure, people will stay where they feel valued and they feel known? So what kinds of strategies or practices could be beneficial? Because I can imagine that ours isn't the only church like that, right? That have those different kinds of scenarios where the door is kind of open and whoever will come in. What kind of strategies do you think would be beneficial for a church, and practices would be beneficial when you have churches that might be in scenarios like that?
Well, I know for Bethany First Church, while we're in the city of Bethany, obviously, there's a community that is just outside. It's a very impoverished community called Two Lakes. And we immediately, this is before my time at Bethany, but immediately found that in that community there was really only a gas station where people were getting much of their food, and because they knew that, the markup on those items was major. And so our church went in with to develop a food center and a pantry so that they could go in and have food provided to them for free. And the church developed people that would shop with those individuals. So they would meet them at the door, and once word got out that was there, people just came, many of them came all at once, and so they have shoppers that would talk to them and guide them through the store. But other things that happened with that was that we immediately began to see major needs that could be met. So it wasn't that BFC was saying, hey, come to our church. It was, let's go into your community. Let's meet the needs, the basic human needs that you have. And a medical facility was established. And so people could go to that. And then after that, a church plant was formed there. And Pastor Thaddeus Black became the pastor at Two Lakes, who had years in prison for drug trafficking, and the Lord just radically saved him, and he's been ordained now in the Church of the Nazarene. And it's been a beautiful thing to watch as the church goes into the community to meet those needs. And only after that do we invite them to meet with Christ and to be a part of a church community.
That's awesome. I think it's hard to share Christ with a hungry man or a hungry woman, or one who, and even Scripture talks about that. If your brother needs a coat, don't just offer your prayer, give him your coat. Like, that's how that works. And so I think that, I think you hit something very important, like in the community where your church sits, where you serve, or if you are a church who, like you said, people drive in, how do we teach people to assess exegete their community, so that then they know, like, where might Jesus might be calling me, or as a church, where might he be calling us? What are practices or even suggestions we would give to the lead pastor, to other leaders in the church, to be able to look at something like that?
We do something every year. It's probably familiar with prayer walks, things like that. We do every January and beginning of February, we walk through our missional practices. So every January and February, we start the year off with a sermon series on our missional practices. Smack dab in the middle of that, we do a prayer drive, because it's cold in Nashville in January. And so we provide a map. We record prayers that are led by people in the community, whether they attend our church or not. We write brief prayers and invite people right after church. Sometimes we provide a meal for them, or either before or after, to kind of debrief and kind of see, like, what did you see? What did you notice? What did the Lord say to you in this time? But we drive through the community, through all of those corners of the community that I described, and just invite them to have their eyes open and see what God might show them. And that's something we do. And we probably have 50 people every January who do that. And at first, I kind of thought, oh man, it's just 50 people. But that's 50 people who are down and who are excited and want to know what's going on in our community and want to see what more could we do. And so that continues to be a really, really fruitful practice for us at the beginning of the year.
That is awesome. I'm taking that back home. It's one of the best ways to remember someone, I always heard, was to remember them in prayer. And there's a connection that happens as a result. My ears are open, maybe more in tune as I'm praying for this group of people. That's really good.
I think having a connection to the schools is really important. I think through the schools, you're able to understand more fully what people are facing in your community. And so just partnering with, some of the schools that are closest to you and having conversations and building bridges of trust with the leadership of the schools. And that it's not, hey, We just want to figure out how we can serve and how we can help provide and meet needs. And then listen and understand, what are these students facing? What are they going and talking to their teachers and their counselors about? What are the practical needs that they have? What are some of the emotional needs that they have? I think another key piece is that people feel like it's not about, I'm trying to get you into the door of this church building, but we are here to solely love and to serve. And that is it. There's zero expectation by accepting this gift or by participating or whatever. We just are here to love and extend Jesus to our community.
Yeah, I think it's good to always ask, if we shut our doors tomorrow, would it matter to our community? Would our community hurt because we're no longer a church? And if that is a hard answer or a hard question to answer, and the answer is no, then maybe we have to rethink our mission in our communities. And I think that's a great point about the schools. Our Grace Church is located in a neighborhood and on a street with, I think there's 5 other churches on this street. And so, but we have a school 2 blocks down from us that we partner with, and low-income families, free lunches for the kids. And so one of our congregants said, when these kids go home for spring break, I'm concerned that they're not eating. Where are they getting their food from? A lot of single parent homes who are working, the kids are home just throughout the week waiting for school to start back up, and they eat at least 1 meal a day at school. And so we started doing, it started as a peanut butter and jelly drive, and we would send every kid home at that school with some peanut butter and jelly at spring break, and then it transitioned into cereal. And so each spring break we do a cereal drive, and then we take that cereal to Highland Park Elementary, and those kids get to take home cereal, something easy, because a lot of kids walk home. And so something a little bit easier. We found the peanut butter and jelly was kind of cumbersome. And so sent them home with cereal, but just a way to say, like, if there's a need, the people of God should be the ones meeting the need first and foremost. And so more so than come to our church, come see our programming or whatever it is. But if you're hungry, we want to feed you. That's the most important thing. And so I think that's a good point, to find a way to partner with schools in your community. And because if you're partnering with schools, you're impacting multiple generations of people. For instance, Highland Park obviously is an elementary school, but a lot of those kids are with grandparents as their guardians, parent, you know what I'm saying? So you're impacting multiple generations when we're being the hands and feet of Jesus to these children at the school. And so just a great way to impact the community around you.
And that is worship.
Yes, right.
That it's not congregational singing, but that's worship. And if worship doesn't send the church outward with a sense of justice and a call toward life-giving practice like this, then it's just music. So how do you develop a worship strategy? This is it. You can figure out how to make sure everyone's represented well in a service. That looks different for every context. But this is all worship.
Yeah, we love to sing the song, Oceans. Spirit, lead me where my trust is without borders. Well, here's the thing. If he's only leading us just to the door of our church, we might have missed exactly where he's leading us to go as a congregation, right? And trust without borders means that we're willing to go into the spaces that are unfamiliar, that we may be uncomfortable with, and he still calls us. We have a leader in the Nazarene Church who really focuses on church planting. And one of the things, as we were getting started, he reminded us, he was like, look, all the folks in this community are God's kids. Not all of them know it, though. That's right. And what does that mean for the church? Like, when you set up camp here, that means there are a bunch of God's kids that now have the opportunity to know that he loves them. What will you do with that? And it means that we can't spend all of our time inside, and we have to give people tools to go outside. And so are there any strategies or tools that you have given your folks to be able to go outside those doors and do some of that work? Like, because sometimes you'll hear people will say, I don't feel comfortable witnessing. I don't feel comfortable with sharing, evangelism makes me uncomfortable. Are there any tools that you have used that people can go out with that may be conversation starters or things they've been able to use to help them have those conversations with people they may meet?
Yeah, during COVID, is that a 4-letter word? Can we say that? As we were reopening the church for regular worship, we saw that more than half of our church still wasn't coming back. And so we walked through a sermon series about hospitality and hosting people in our homes and being hosted by people. And then it just kind of continued to expand. And so then instead of hosting people in our homes, it was like, okay, what does it look like for us to host people outside of our church here? Yeah. What does it look like for our church to be hosted in the neighborhood by people who have no attachment to us? And so we leaned into hospitality a lot, and we provided some resources like conversation starters and an invitation. This week, have a family over for dinner that you've never invited. There was another time where, because of a similar situation, we do a late night pancake breakfast for college students during exam week, and there was a tornado one year. And so we had to cancel the event. So we had all this syrup and pancake batter and stuff like that. So they packaged it up and put them in bags and little kits. So Sunday after church, they said, have somebody go meet somebody new at church, or go as you run into people as you're having lunch this Sunday after church, invite somebody over. Here's the food. Just make pancakes. Like, all of the barriers are down. Here's some things you can talk about. Here's some questions. Here's some easy ways to get to know people. All you got to do is invite them into your house. So it was a real cool and simple, practical way.
That's awesome. At OVCN, we have several local partnerships through our missions team, where we believe in the mission of the work that those organizations are doing, whether it's Gospel Rescue Mission or whether it's adoption agency or foster care or whatever. So there's a handful of those organizations that we've actually built relationships with that we then have on our website as opportunities where people can sign up and serve, right? So it's a kind of a fast track to get to the point where we're uncomfortable. But we want to serve, but we don't know what the first step is. And so we've like, hey, look, we've vetted some places for you to go. We believe in the mission of these places, and this is where we want to be salt and light. So we try to make it just one step easier for people to have those opportunities by having the relationships already nailed down and then providing those places and providing the site. We've already done the legwork, right? It's like, well, I'd like to go and do this, but I'm not quite sure where. We're like, we can help you with that.
That's awesome. That's awesome.
We took some time, our discipleship pastor at Grace Church, Tanya Marks, she's phenomenal, my mentor. I look up to her so much. I've learned so much under her leadership, but she has a heart for people being able to share their testimony and knowing what to say, and how, there was this discovery that people were like, do I have a testimony? I don't know, or, I don't know how to articulate it. And so we have D groups, discipleship groups that meet and just walking through scripture together. And one of the initiatives in those D groups is learning how to share your testimony, and simplifying it and just being able to articulate. If you meet someone and someone asks you why Jesus, can you say why? And can you really articulate it and tell your story concisely? And that's not something that feels scary and out of reach. And so we have a podcast at Grace Church too, and every summer we do Summer of Testimonies, and we bring people in from the church to just share their testimony on the podcast. And so that's kind of been an initiative that we've done to help people put language to their story with God, so that if the opportunity arises in a conversation with someone, as you're in relationship with a coworker or a neighbor or a family member, can you articulate your story with God? And if someone asks, can you talk about it? And can you tell them why Jesus? What's he done in your life? And because I think that's important to being able to do that as we're out, and church community is also the same. A lot of people live not in the neighborhood. People drive in 20, 30 minutes away. And there are people in the neighborhood too, so it's kind of a all around. So our reach is far and wide, the church community is. And so helping people, giving them the tools to be able to talk about their faith and their walk with Jesus, I think is really important.
You know, when we consider this topic and how it relates to worship, you said it earlier, but this is all part of that act of worship. It's not meant to be lived just inside of the four walls. It's meant to be lived outside of the walls. And if we don't have a strategy, if we don't have a plan, if we don't have a practice, what it becomes is us four and no more, right? We become this community amongst ourselves, not really sharing this incredible gospel message that Jesus saves. At the end of the day, if we took all of the songs, if we even said in this group, what's our favorite song? It all lends us back to the idea that Jesus saves. He has given us new life, and that is a message that needs to be shared with the world. This has been such great, fruitful conversation, and we hope that as you consider the context in which you live and where your church exists, what does it look like to develop the kind of strategy that ensures that the gospel and our worship goes beyond the front door? We are praying for you and wishing God's best upon you and the ministry in which you serve.